Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Global Flavor Influences with Pulses. My name is Kathy Powers, and joining me today is Chef Samantha Gasparo. I'm Executive Director of Healthy School Recipes, and Chef Sam is the Executive Chef for Healthy School Recipes. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the USA Dry Pea and Lentil Council, and the American Pulse Association, a coalition of nonprofit organizations devoted to increasing the consumption of pulse crops, dry peas, lentils, chickpeas, and beans. The USA Dry Pea and Lentil Council was established in 1965 and represents multiple grower and industry organizations in the production, marketing, and end-use applications for dry peas, lentils, and chickpeas. The American Pulse Association provides a unified coalition of pulse crop processors, warehouses, exporters, food manufacturers, producers, and associate members representing the entire U.S. pulse crop value chain from farm to fork. The American Pulse Association works to fund research focused on the nutrition, functionality, sustainability of pulse crops. USA Pulses is dedicated to helping school food service professionals have more tools and resources to serve nutrient-rich pulses. There are school food service recipes that highlight a variety of pulses and educational handouts and posters for students and staff to learn more about pulses. To learn more, check out their website, usapulses.org/school. We truly are honored to have them as a sponsor for today's webinar. A few housekeeping items before we begin. The recipes that are being demonstrated today are available at healthyschoolrecipes.com. The Continuing Education Certificate from School Nutrition Association is available under the Handout tab. We will also email this after the webinar to all attendees. During the webinar, all attendees will be muted. If you have any technical issues, please access the help screen at the top of the attendee control panel. And then finally, we love your questions and comments. If you have any questions or comments during the webinar, please type them into the question box. We will try to answer them as we go through the webinar, but we will also have a few moments at the end to answer questions. The overview for today's webinar, I'll start with an introduction on the versatility of pulses. Then Chef Sam will do a recipe demonstration of chana masala. It'll come back to me where I'll talk about basic elements of global cuisine, and then we'll go back to Chef Sam for a recipe of harissa red lentil hummus. We'll come back to me. We'll talk about how you introduce global foods to your students, and then we'll wrap up with a final recipe demonstration, leaving time for question and answers. We also have a giveaway. Today we're giving away our knife kit package. This is a high quality chef's knife, retail value of $75 with the knife guard. We have a portable knife sharpener, my favorite bench scraper, and some Healthy School Recipe swag, a great pot holder. You must be present to win at the end, so stay with us throughout the webinar. The objectives for today's webinar include, at the end of the training, you will be able to describe the basic elements of global cuisine. You'll identify the primary ingredients, seasonings, and sauces used in popular global cuisine. You'll be able to plan global menus that meet USDA nutrition requirements for reimbursable meals. And you'll be able to define pulses. Great, let's get started with a poll question. We have a number of poll questions throughout the webinar to help you interact with us. So let's launch the first poll question. What type of pulses are most popular in your district? Select all that apply. Beans, split peas, chickpeas, garbanzos, lentils, or other. And if you list other, please type that into the question box so we know what the other is. And usually we take about 45 seconds to a minute for each poll question. So we'll have just about 10 more seconds before we wrap up the poll. And there's a clear winner here, but I'm glad to see that every category is represented. Okay, the poll has closed, and we see that 89% of you say that beans are most popular, followed by chickpeas at 38%, followed by lentils at 6%, and then split peas at 1%. Victoria says that her students also like black-eyed peas. Great. Thank you, Victoria, for adding that. And thank you for participating in the poll. So let's get started talking about what pulses are. And pulses are the edible seeds of legumes. And the name pulse actually comes from pulse, P-U-L-S, which is the Latin word meaning thick stew. And when I think of pulses, one thing that comes to mind certainly is a thick soup or stew. Pulses include lentils. Lentils are interesting. If you look at the name lentils, you see that we get lens from that name. And lentils do look like a double convex lens. It includes beans, all sorts of beans, dry peas, and chickpeas. One of the many things I like about working with pulses is that they're so versatile in school meals and really multitask at crediting. We know that pulses will credit as a vegetable at lunch. In fact, we need to serve pulses, dried beans, and peas each week in school meals. However, they will also credit as a meat alternate, but not at the same time. It's one or other. Interesting, they will also at breakfast, after you meet the grain requirement, the pulses will also credit as a grain. Using it as a meat alternate, it'll credit as 1 ounce grain after you meet the grain requirement. And then if served at breakfast, like the cinnamon sugar roasted chickpeas that is available on Healthy School Recipes, if served at breakfast, they will also credit as a fruit. And I can see serving a cinnamon sugar roasted chickpea with a fruit cup at breakfast. So let's think about this. Pulses will actually credit for a vegetable, meat alternate, fruit, or grain. Can you imagine that kind of versatility? The second thing that I love about pulses is that I know that they are nutrient rich or nutrient dense. And two important nutrients that I want to point out. First is protein. Pulses are a terrific and important plant-based protein in our diet. Pulses also are an excellent source of fiber. And in a half a cup, you'll get between 6 and 9 grams of fiber on average. In fact, a half a cup of navy beans will have 10 grams of fiber per half cup. I'll tell you a little secret in my diet each day. I include a half a cup of pulses at some point every single day because I know otherwise it's almost impossible for me to get the fiber that I need. Most Americans do not consume enough fiber. We need about 14 grams of fiber for every 1,000 calories. So if you have a student who should be consuming 1,500 calories, that's 21 grams of fiber each day. That's difficult to get without adding nutrient-rich pulses. We know too that pulses also are an excellent source of folate. Of course, they're gluten-free and allergen-friendly, and they have a low glycemic index. Again, just a nutrition powerhouse. In addition to really multitasking creatine in school meals, we see that they're very versatile. Pulses will be found in everything from side salads, such as this Tuscan white bean salad, to salad toppers. Here we have the Moroccan crispy roasted chickpeas, chickpeas that have been oven roasted with a Moroccan seasoning mix. Similar to the cinnamon sugar roasted chickpeas I showed a few minutes ago. They can be served, pulses can be served as a vegetable side dish, such as red beans and rice. We have a recipe from the Burke County School Nutrition Department on the website. But they're also finding an important place in plant-based main dishes, such as this Asian-style sweet and spicy veggie burger with a pineapple slaw. And even at breakfast, in huevo ranchero dish shown here. Not only are they versatile in many different meal components or in different menu segments, they are also versatile across all child nutrition programs and can be used in school breakfast programs, the National School Lunch Program, summer food service program, seamless summer option, and a child and adult care food program. So I hope you see just how versatile USA Pulses can be. Now let's bring Chef Sam up for our first demonstration today. As I mentioned before, Chef Sam is the executive chef for HealthySchoolRecipes.com. Previously, she was chef and nutrition coordinator for the Wyndham Raymond Schools in Maine. She has a bachelor's degree in culinary nutrition from Johnson & Wales University, and she's on the advisory board of the Culinary Institute of Child Nutrition at the Institute of Child Nutrition. Hey, Chef Sam, how are you today?
Hey, doing great. Nice to be here with everyone and with you, Kathy.
Oh, I'm so excited about this. This webinar really came out of a recipe project that we were doing with USA Pulses, and we developed a number of recipes for their website, and you're going to be demonstrating some of those today. Sam, I know when USA Pulses approached us for this project, it took us about 2 seconds to say yes, because we love working with pulses. And I know that's true with you and your family as well.
Absolutely. We love pulses in a wide variety here and flavors, my family and in the school districts in Maine. So it's been really great just to be able to play with these ingredients and also create some delicious recipes. And we always make, like you said, Kathy, they are really a nutrition powerhouse. So they're such a great ingredient to have on hand for so many dishes.
Great. Well, we'll see you after the first recipe demonstration, Sam.
All right, sounds great. I am excited to be here today to talk about a variety of globally influenced dishes using pulses and a variety of pulses. They are such a versatile ingredient and really create a lot of flavor, packed with protein, and they're perfect for school nutrition menus because they're hearty and they're user-friendly, and you can really create flavorful dishes. They absorb a lot of flavor, so it just allows you to use different spices or different ingredients to create that great dish. So the first dish I'm gonna make that's globally influenced is a chana masala, which is great for school nutrition kitchens because it's a pretty simple dish. Most of the ingredients, as you can see, come from all these delicious, flavorful spices. The base is chickpeas, which is chana, means it's from India, and it means chickpea, and then masala is the blend of spices. So we're going to use chickpeas, diced tomatoes, and some onions. And you could easily use frozen onions. Today I'm going to be using some freshly chopped onions, but frozen onions would be great too. So really this can be super user-friendly. You might not even necessarily need a knife to get this done in your kitchen. You don't have to chop a lot of onions. Use some frozen ones. Just make sure before you're using the frozen ones that you're thawing them out beforehand so they're thawed for this dish. So what I'm going to do first is start sauteing my onions here. So I'm going to turn my burner on, and what I want is just to get this pan warmed up. So get it warm, I'm going to add my oil, saute my onions, and then blend all my spices together. So at this point, if you're using frozen onions, make sure that they were thawed out overnight before you make this dish, so you can just pull them out and get ready to go. So this is best made in a tilt skillet, I would suggest, for school nutrition kitchens, but you could also do this in the oven in hotel pans. You would just need to portion them out based on the size of the recipe. Usually, I don't know exactly for this recipe, but it ranges somewhere from 25 to 50 servings per steam table pan or hotel pan. I say hotel pan all the time, but it's also steam table pan. So that's the same thing. So you could also do it in the oven, and I'll show you later on in a dish. I'll keep you in full suspense for how to saute and caramelize onions in the oven. So now I'm going to add my oil here, but you have to wait for it. I'm not going to tell you yet. So I'm going to add my oil, and I'm going to just get that a little warmed up, not too much, but then I'm going to add my onions. You can use olive oil, you can use canola oil, you can use a blended oil. What we're going for is mild flavor, nothing too spicy. And we just want to saute these onions. You just really get that, you know, you're not really trying to caramelize them too much. You just really want to cook them down. You're going for translucent. This is going to be a kind of a chickpea stew and tomato stew with all these spices. So you want to just make sure that you're sauteing them until they're translucent, so you get that nice sweet onion flavor, but it's not caramelized or burnt or crispy in any capacity. So we have that. I'm going to let that saute a little bit, do its thing, let the heat caramelize. And in the next, while that's going, I'm going to mix my spices together. So I like to mix my spices together, one, because it's a checkpoint. Let me just turn this down a little. But also we can blend all the spices so you don't have all your turmeric in one portion of the onions. Because as soon as you dump the spice in, the onions are just going to start to soak it up, and the oil's going to soak it up, and you're going to get this lovely flavor. But sorry, I can turn that down. So then you want to make sure it's nice and blended. So what we're going to start with, I'll just go through these, and I like to always smell spices. It's a good habit just for quality control. As soon as you open spices, the quality will start to decline after 3 to 6 months. So it's not going to be as powerful. So if you know right after you open it and you smell it and you say, yes, this coriander smells amazing, then you know after 6 months, you're like, oh, that's not as potent as it was 6 months ago. And if you make this dish on a cycle menu, you will pick up on those cues. And you know you might need to add a little more to develop that flavor. So here we're going to add some coriander, which is that cilantro flavor, but it's actually the, so it's a cilantro, but not the leaves of the cilantro. It's the ground up stem. And then here we have some cumin, and we have some garlic powder and ginger powder. So all easy and affordable spices. Some turmeric that's going to go in there. And then a little bit of salt, which is just going to help bring all these flavors together. You need to highlight this. It's going to help bring it all together. Another reason why I like to smell my spices too, and put them in a bowl first. And you could make this blend, and then you could have it on the shelf just ready to go. So you don't have to do this every time you make it. So that would be a great kitchen efficiency, to have this mix made for your chana masala on the shelf. You're going to make it, grab your mix, your chickpeas, your tomatoes, your oil, you're ready to roll. And also, it's just a good idea not to be grabbing when you're rushing, trying to prepare a meal and things are crazy and hectic in the kitchen. One time I was making chili for about 1,000 and I thought I grabbed the chili powder in a rush, and turns out I grabbed cloves, and that's two totally different flavors. So luckily I was able to save it. But when we're cooking in volume, we really want to have everything mise en place, measured out, in its place, ready to go, so we don't make those kind of errors. We all make mistakes, definitely myself included. So just that's a checkpoint to just make sure that you're gonna make the correct recipe and there's not gonna be any errors, and your food's gonna be ready to go for your kids when they walk in. So the last ingredient I'm gonna add is the garam masala, and that's a spice blend in and of itself, but it's got some great flavors. It's got a little bit of cinnamon in it, and so it just brings this all together and adds a nice flavor. You're making your own little spice mix here. You can see it looks delicious. Smells so good too. And then I'm going to add this right to my onions. And you always want to add this at the beginning. Oh, that smells so good. I wish you could get smells and videos. So I'm going to stir this all in, and you see that, right? Like I said, that onion and the oil just sucks that up because it's dried spices. So they want to rehydrate, right? They want that moisture, and that's what builds their flavor. Give them time to rehydrate. So the next thing I'm going to add my chickpeas, garbanzo beans here, and stir those in. Mix that all together, and then I'm going to add my tomatoes. It's really going to be the help bring this together. It's also going to deglaze the bottom of my pan at the same time, and what I mean by that is that acid in the tomato is going to help get all those spices that are stuck to the bottom back into my stew, so flavor is ideal. So I'm going to add this here. Before I add it all, I'm just going to stir a little bit. So you can hear that. I don't know if you can hear that sound, but that's the acid in the tomato just getting all that spice right off the bottom there. So we're going to stir this all together. Oh, it looks so good. And this is best served over rice or grain, or you can serve it with naan bread. Just really great flavor. So now I'm going to add this. The rest of my tomatoes, I'll specify what this is. I'm going to add the rest of my tomatoes, and you can search the recipes and get this exact recipe, so you know the quantities and you can scale it up for your program as well. You could really use diced or crushed tomatoes in here. It's up to you what you have on hand. There's a little bit of flexibility. So I don't know if you can see there, but really all those spices that were stuck to the bottom are coming right back here into my stew. So then I'm just gonna let this simmer for a little bit. So that's pretty much it. After I let this simmer and bring it to a boil, actually then one more ingredient that's one of my favorites, I can't forget it. I love citrus. Anybody who knows me know I love citrus. So there's a little bit of lemon juice that I'm gonna put in this, and that lemon juice is just gonna help bring all these flavors together. It's not gonna taste like lemon. It's just gonna help bring flavors. Just like salt, citrus can act as a flavor enhancer. So in the perfect quantities for this chana masala, for tomato soup, it's just perfect. So I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon juice and then stir it all in. And that's gonna help just blend these flavors without tasting like lemon juice. But you wanna make sure you're really using good quality lemon juice. The lemon juice that's in the storeroom on the shelf, that has lots of additives in it. So you wanna make sure that you're squeezing your own if possible, or buying a pasteurized lemon juice or lime juice to use. They come in pasteurized, just like orange juice does, comes in. You just have to divide it up into the quantities that you use in recipes, pop it in the freezer, and pull it out when you're ready to go. So now this is going to simmer for about 20 minutes and it's ready to go. So now we'll have you rate this recipe.
Great. Thank you, Samantha. That looks delicious. Take a moment to rate this recipe. Tell us how likely you're to use this. Unlikely to use this recipe, might give it a try. Good chance that it'll work for our school, or definitely will be a hit. Thank you so much for taking a moment to rate this recipe. Tell us if you're likely to use this fragrant chana masala. The poll is wrapping up, and we see that 52% of you might give it a try. 29% said good chance that it'll work. 9% said definitely will be a hit. And only 9% said unlikely to use this recipe. Great. Thank you, Chef Sam. That looks delicious. We're going to take Chef Sam down, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the basic elements of global cuisine. The first point that I want to talk about when we talk about global cuisine, serving global cuisine in schools, is why it's so important that we pay attention to this today. And there's a couple of different reasons. Oh, I'm sorry, before I get to that, we had a question from Stephanie. Stephanie asked a question: is it correct that students with a peanut allergy cannot consume chickpeas or garbanzo beans? And what I want to say here, Stephanie, is that pulses are part of the legume family, like peanuts are part of the legume family. But just because a student has a peanut allergy does not mean, or it's not likely, that they're going to be allergic to all pulses. However, students that do have peanut allergies can have a chickpea allergy as well. And they should have that tested with their allergist. I also want to say that students with peanut allergies, even though peanuts are not technically a nut, students with peanut allergies are more likely to have tree nut allergies than they are to be allergic to pulses. But that's a great question. Okay, getting back to why global cuisine is important. The students that we're serving today are not the students that we served 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or the students that I grew up with. The Gen Z and Alpha generation are the most racially and ethnically diverse of any generation to this point. So the students that we're serving are much more diverse than ever before. Couple that with the fact that students really, in many cases, are more adventuresome today and are eating out in restaurants in their community and having foods that I never had growing up. I think about sushi as an easy example. I never grew up with sushi, but yet today with students it's commonplace. Or wasabi, or sriracha, naan bread, pita, even soy sauce was not common in the 50s. Hummus, who knew hummus prior to 10 or 15 years ago? So students are being exposed to a lot more food today, and they want those same foods in the cafeteria and in their schools. Well, let's talk a little bit about what we mean by global cuisine. Often when we talk about global cuisine, we define it by country or even continent. We may say French food, or we may use continent and say African cuisine, or we may say American cuisine. But that really is doing an injustice to the global cuisines. And I want to use American cuisine as an example. If you were asked to explain to someone from another country, let's say you were traveling the world, and someone asked you, well, what is American cuisine? Well, first of all, North America is a large continent. That includes Canada, the United States, Mexico, and Central America. So that's going to be, a huge area. But even looking at just the United States, is the cuisine of, let's say, Native Americans the same as the cuisine of New Englanders or people from the Pacific Northwest, or New Orleans. In our country alone, there are great influences throughout the country. Looking at pulses we see in New England, you might have the Boston baked beans. You go to New Orleans and you might have red beans and rice. The Southwest would be cowboy beans. Three Sisters, the beans, the squash, and corn is a foundation of many of Native American recipes. Or in the Pacific Northwest, you might have something like a lentil salad. Very different cuisine throughout the United States. However, there are some common elements of global cuisine, and this is an important point that I want to make today. We are often intimidated by the idea of preparing global food because they're unfamiliar. But if you break it down into the components, we see that the elements, that the basic components are very similar across the world. For example, much of the global cuisine is based on pulses and grains. And if you know how to cook pulses and various grains, that is a huge step forward in knowing how to prepare various global cuisine. In fact, I would break it down and say that beans and rice are kind of fundamental throughout the globe. And if we look across the world, we'll see that pulses in combination with grains are really kind of a fundamental food. And this is for a couple of reasons. But if you go back historically, beans and grains were two ingredients that were shelf stable and that people had access to throughout the year. We also know that that the amino acids in pulses complement the amino acids in grain in a way that increases the protein value of the dish. Not to say today that we need to complement proteins as was once thought, because we are eating a variety of high protein foods. But historically, those dishes were developed because the proteins complemented each other. I'd like to know how our ancestors got so smart. That's really amazing. But thinking about in the United States, the Boston baked beans and brown bread, or in India, the dal with naan bread, or in the Mediterranean, we have hummus with pita bread. In France, cassoulet is somewhat of a national dish. So all across the globe, we see that beans in combination with grains are used in almost every global cuisine. Some elements of global cuisine that might vary in the specific cuisines are the use of various vegetables and seasonings. So these are elements that might be more unusual in global cuisines. I think about the difference between maybe Mexican cuisine and United States, the foods of the United States, and think about the vegetables that may be different. You know, in Mexico, jicama is going to be more common. Cactus is going to be more commonly used. And those are, of course, beginning to become more available in the United States, but not too long ago would have been unusual items. I bet a number of you are serving jicama in your school. And then we see that global cuisine will also be differentiated by the seasonings. The herbs, spices, the citrus and other elements that we would use to season food. Some of the popular global seasonings that we see used across the globe include peppers, black pepper, white pepper, Szechuan pepper, capsicum, which is the chili peppers, from sweet peppers to paprika or smoked paprika, chili powder. My favorite is Aleppo powder. Cumin is found across the globe as well, from India to Mexican cuisine. It's very popular, as is cilantro, found in many cuisines. Citrus, as Chef Sam mentioned, lime and lemon, and then garlic is somewhat of a universal seasoner as well. And then there will be other use of spices or a combination of spices, seasoning blends that will be more common to a specific area. However, we need to understand too that even in, let's say, for example, India, even though garam masala, which is a seasoning blend, is used in many regions of India, sometimes even families will have their own garam masala recipe. So you have to understand that some cuisines are going to be very localized. And then, of course, we know that sauces are used throughout the cuisine. And becoming familiar with some key sauces is important as we incorporate global cuisine. I want to mention that there are a number of global seasoning blends that are available on healthyschoolrecipes.com. And again, the recipe for the chana masala and all the recipes that we're doing today are available on healthyschoolrecipes.com. And then as we wrap up this segment, just before we bring Chef Sam back, I want to suggest that you also look to street food for inspiration with global cuisine. And these are foods that are found on street corners and markets around the world that would be ideal for incorporating into school menus, whether it's a chickpea-based falafel or a banh mi sandwich, a street taco, empanada, or chicken skewers. These are all popular street food items. Great. Let's bring Chef Sam up now. And she is going to demonstrate our second recipe for the harissa red lentil hummus. Welcome back, Chef Sam. I'm going to just take down my camera.
All right. So the next dish is the harissa red lentil hummus. Now, just like in schools, we're making hummus, which is traditionally chickpeas or garbanzo beans. Making it with red lentil hummus is actually probably easier for school nutrition programs, and it's got the same cream. It's got actually it's creamier, I think, than the chickpea hummus, and so it's super easy to prepare these, and you can do it ahead of time. Just make sure they're cooled down when you put them in the hummus. So to prepare them, I've taken my red lentils and I've rinsed them. So this is my dry red lentil. And I place them in this steam table pan, and I'm just going to add water over them. And as Kathy said, all these recipes, the harissa red lentil hummus is on Healthy School Recipes. So these exact ratios are on there for you to use in the quantity that you're going to use it in for your school. So we want to add water to these, and then you're just going to place the lid on, and you're going to place them in the steamer for about 20 minutes. They should absorb all of the water. You want most of the water to be gone. Red lentils are going to get really mushy, which is why they're so great in here, and we want them to overcook. We want them to get a little bit mushy because it's just going to make them so easy to break down. Oftentimes trying to make a chickpea-based hummus in your school kitchens can be difficult. I know it was difficult for us because our food processor was only so big, even though it was industrial, and probably on the fifth number 10 can of chickpeas, it was hot and bothered for sure. So this is really great because these almost mash on themselves. So put this right in the steamer. If you want to put it in the oven, you can. It will take longer, but just put it in the steamer, your steamer for 20 minutes. If you put it in the oven, it takes a little longer because the water just has to boil and then it will begin. So you have that 20-minute period where the water is coming to a boil in the oven, and then it will actually start to cook the lentils. So it would probably take somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour if you toss those in the oven. So either way, that will work. So here's what they look like when they're cooked. So as you can see here, they're really mushy. I can almost do this with a spatula. I'm going to use the food processor just to make it really easy, but they're already really broken down. You want it to be thick. So I cooked those, I cooled them, and you can see they changed color a little bit. It's a more mild color. Just going to really have a creamy texture to it. So I'm going to add these to my food processor. You can see that it's going to get, you know, kind of chunky when you cool it. It's not as fluid there. So what I'm going to do is just get this all mixed together, mush it down. You can see how easy that is. Then I'm just going to start to turn this on a little bit to get it broken down. And you have your base ready to go. So now what the food processor really is doing is it's just mixing our ingredients together. So the first thing I'm going to put in is the harissa, which is a spicy chili paste, origins of Northern Africa. So it's got great flavor. Our 6 through 12 students, they love spice. This is an interesting spice. It's got a lot of depth to it. It's smoky. You can make your own you can make your own harissa in your schools for this if you wanted to. It's just a red pepper paste, and that would probably reduce the sodium a little bit because there is some in here, but minimal, and it's got like paprika and smokiness to it. It's really nice, but it is spicy. So you just want to make sure you add a little bit and then keep adding more depending on what your students like. Now I'm going to add some tahini, which is some ground sesame seeds right here. And then I have my spices. I'm going to add my cumin. And then I'm going to add my granulated garlic. Now I'm just going to give this a little mix to start the process in my food processor. So now that I have this a little bit mixed and starting to go, you can see how easy this is. Anybody who's ever trying to kind of broken down a number 10 can of garbanzo beans, that's kind of tricky in these sometimes. An immersion blender works really great, but you could easily make this with garbanzo beans. You could also make it with white beans. Those are really creamy. Sometimes our K through 5 have a little bit of a problem with the garbanzo beans just because of that skin that never really gets mashed up in the food processor. And sometimes it has too much texture to it. It's not as smooth as it should be. Red lentils and a white bean like cannellini or something like that will also be a great option. There's also one of my favorite bean dips. It's kind of off topic here, but it's a black bean hummus, and it's got cilantro and salsa in it and lime juice. That's also on Healthy School Recipes. It is absolutely delicious and a great use of a variety of beans. Every time we think of bean dip, often in schools we think of hummus, but we can really use any type of bean to create delicious flavor. So now I'm adding my olive oil. I'm going to give that a mix. And then I'm going to really turn this on and let it go. And as I do that, I'm going to add some lime juice. Welcome back, citrus, to my favorite. So I'm going to add that right to here as it's running to really bring out all those flavors. There's no salt added to this. We're just using all these flavors to really blend it together. And the citrus, as I said before, will help heighten the flavor and bring it all together and make all these ingredients taste delicious. So as this runs, I'm going to be adding this here. You can see you have this creamy, delicious dip. The harissa brought back some of that red flavor of the original red lentils, but it's so creamy and it just is easy to scoop. Our students will absolutely love it, and it's just smoother than those garbanzo beans. So it's a great, red lentils are a great base because often they overcook. It's really easy to overcook them, but let's use that to our advantage and create a delicious dip with it. So now we'll have you rate this recipe.
Thank you, Chef Sam. Please take a moment to rate the harissa red lentil hummus. I love the idea that you can use different pulses in the bean dips and that it's easy to swap your pulses. So rate this recipe. Unlikely to use it, might give it a try, good chance that it'll work, and definitely be a hit. Okay, thank you for participating in the poll. We see that wrapping up, and we see that 54% of you might give it a try, 30% said good chance that it'll work, 9% said definitely be a hit, and 7% said unlikely to use this recipe. Great. We'll come back to Chef Sam in a few minutes, but now I want to talk about introducing global flavors and cuisine to your students. Great. So let's talk about introducing global cuisine to students. And the first thing I want to say about this is that you need to think about why you are serving various globally inspired or global foods. Is your student looking for that authentic food? Maybe you've had recent immigrant population and that you're wanting to serve foods that are more familiar to those students. Or maybe it's because your student's favorite restaurant is the Vietnamese restaurant down the street and they love the banh mi sandwich. So maybe you're looking for more inspired global food. Those are two really different approaches, and I think you need to decide within your district what approach is important. Or maybe for some dishes, you'll be looking for a more authentic global food, and others you just want to use the seasonings and be inspired by the global flavors. I also want to mention that there are many more students today that are the third culture kids. Pollock and Riken, in their book, Third Culture Kids Growing Up Among Worlds, defines a third culture kid as a person who has spent a significant part of his or her developmental years outside their parents' culture. The third culture kid builds relationships to all cultures while not having full ownership in any. And we find this often, especially in immigrant populations, where at home the student might be eating more traditional foods, but amongst their friends and peers, they may be eating more Americanized foods, and that they really are then blending their food into what we call a third culture food. An example of a third culture food that I like to use is a Korean barbecue taco. Very popular item, but tacos are not indigenous to Korea. So that's kind of a third culture food. One of the original third culture foods, I think, was the banh mi sandwich that we find in Vietnamese culture. And it was created when the French occupied Vietnam and really brought over their baguette and pate. And it was coupled with the really bright pickling flavors of Vietnamese vegetables. And that, in essence, is a Vietnamese, or is a fusion or third culture food. What's important in incorporating global cuisine is that you work with your stakeholders to identify what they're looking for. Work with your students, your parents, the community groups, and local restaurants or local chefs that have a full understanding of the culture and the cuisine. In terms of recipe development, if you're looking to add new recipes, you can do this from two approaches. One, you can adapt a standardized recipe where you might take a standardized recipe for a rice or a bean dip, and then you might customize the seasoning according to the cultures that you want to use or evoke. Or you might take a traditional recipe, maybe something from a parent or a local chef, and then standardize that recipe to meet the school need. And then, of course, you want to sample and taste test with students. This is two of my favorite taste testing resources. One is from Vermont Feed. You can find it at vermontvtfeed.org. And the other is a taste test guide from Action for Healthy Kids. But don't forget to sample and taste test as you're introducing new items. Sampling in the classroom, at the service line, at a kiosk in the cafeteria, part of Taste Test Tuesday, or with student advisory groups. It's important that you taste test with students. And a great opportunity to do a taste test using pulses, global pulses, would be on World Pulse Day, coming up on February 10th. In fact, it's February 10th every year. Then I would suggest maybe something like a falafel would be a great item to taste test on World Pulse Day. Great. Let's go back to Chef Sam, and she's going to be demonstrating the final recipe for muhadara. Chef Sam, I know you're coming back on. I loved how many people liked the red lentil hummus recipe. That really is one of my favorites.
I know, mine too. I just think it's extremely versatile and it could take on any flavor. Don't put the harissa in it and go ahead and put, you know, some sriracha in it or whatever. It will take on the ranch flavor, you name it, you can put it in there. So the next dish I'm going to make is a muhadara, which is a brown rice in a lentil dish. And it's one of the oldest dishes from Middle Eastern cuisine. And it's got great flavor, as all these dishes do, but it also can combine well with other dishes. So this is a nice side dish to make. So the first thing we're going to be working with is green lentils. Now these are hardy. These are hard to overcook. So this is great for salads, a variety of salads. You could also swap this out. Instead of using the green, this green lentil, you could use split peas. That would also work well in this. So you have some options there. So it's pretty simple, just like the red lentils. What we're going to do is rinse them, and then we're going to cover them with water. You have them in your steam table pan. And then we're going to cover them with water here. And then we're just going to place the top on them and place them right in the steamer. That is definitely the easiest way to cook these, and they will absorb all of the water, and then they'll be ready to add. If you want to serve them hot, they're really great with just a little Parmesan cheese on them, but if you want to serve them cold, you just got to chill them properly. So I'm going to put those off to the side, and then this is what they look like. These are some nice hot lentils. For this dish, I'm going to keep them nice and warm. The next item I'm going to make is the brown rice. Now this is where a lot of the flavor is in this dish. So I'm going to add my spices here, but I have some cinnamon, which I absolutely love cinnamon in savory cooking. It just adds so much to the dish. And in our in food culture in the United States, when we think of cinnamon, I also think of fall and apple pie and those wonderful flavors and pumpkin pie. But really, when I think cuisine globally, a lot of them have cinnamon and that flavor in it that almost gives it this sweet, savory, spicy effect. So the next thing I'm going to add is some chili powder, cumin. If you notice, cumin's been the hold strong for all these dishes, and a little bit of salt because I'm cooking the rice here. Now I'm mixing these all together again, so there's just even distribution of spice. For kitchen efficiency, and if you make this often, definitely have it done beforehand, have it blended, so when you're cooking, you're just ready to go. I'm going to sprinkle this all over my rice, and then I'm going to mix it all together here. Just try to coat that rice in here with that spice blended in. You don't have to do it too much. And then I'm going to add my water here. Now rice always cooks with a 2-to-1 ratio. Just want to make sure it's 1 part rice, 2 parts liquid, whether that liquid is water or a broth or a stock. It's 2-to-1, which is nice and easy when you're talking about standardized recipes and changing something from 50 portions to 500 portions. 2-to-1. So then cooking the rice and spices is really going to add all of this flavor. You can see it made the rice a nice color. Adding turmeric creates this nice yellow rice. If you wanted to do that in your kitchen, it's just literally brown rice with some turmeric, a little bit of salt. So here's this nice rice. So I'm going to hold that all hot because I'm going to be mixing everything together. So the next tip I have for you, I know you guys have waited a long time for it here, is how to caramelize onions or how to cook onions in the oven. So what I want to do is take my chopped onions here. If they're frozen, you just want to make sure that they're thawed before. And here we have tossed this all together. You really want to coat these onions. And then I want to take my sheet pan, and I do not want to cover it with parchment, but I do want to spray it just to prevent any sticking, and that will help any of the onion bits from burning. You want to layer them. You're going for kind of a sweat saute for the caramelization, so it's okay. When we roast onion or we roast vegetables in the oven, we want to make sure that there's no overcrowding. And there's no, let me grab that one out of there. There's no overcrowding or anything like that, but that's okay in here because what we want to do is just make sure that it's going to kind of sweat and cook. And what's going to happen is the sheet pan is going to get really hot on the bottom here. So it's going to start to saute the bottom, and it can sweat a little through the top, the ones that are bunched together. And then every 20 minutes, every 10 to 20 minutes, you want to just stir it. And then the onions on the bottom of the sheet pan are going to saute a little, and then you flip it around. You want to cook this at a low temperature, probably 300 in a school nutrition oven to 325. You know your oven best, so you work with it, but you're going for low, not super low, but you don't want this to burn, so you might have to play with that a little bit. You can saute anything like this. If you want to saute vegetable for soups because you don't have a kettle, you can do this in a steam table pan as well. So I'm going to add this. I'm going to put this in my oven, and then I'm going to pull out my caramelized onions. So what we want to do is just toss them every about 10 minutes. Takes about 30 minutes to cook them, so it's not too long. So that's creating the caramelization. You could saute probably in about 20 minutes, and you could do that higher if you're going to stir it more often. So now what I'm going to do is just add all of these ingredients together for this blended dish. Now, one of the best parts about offering the lentils with rice is that you're taking an ingredient that your students may not be familiar with, and you're pairing it with one they are familiar with. So that's brown rice. So really giving them the opportunity, that often makes them feel more comfortable. We offered quinoa on our menu and got it to stick because we served it with brown rice and we mixed them together. So that's such a great way for students to get comfortable with dishes. So as you can see here, it's just a nice blended dish. This goes well with a spiced chicken and broccoli or anything like that. So it really is a beautiful dish and with delicious Middle Eastern flavors and spices. So now I'll have you rate this recipe.
Great, thanks, Chef Sam. I do want to mention that this particular recipe is from the John Stalker Institute in Massachusetts, and they, of course, provide great resources for school nutrition professionals in the state of Massachusetts. So take a moment to rate this recipe. Tell us how likely you are to use this recipe. I want to thank Katie and Martha for the comments about the recipes looking so delicious. I agree. So the poll is wrapping up, and we see that 49% might give this a try. No, I'm sorry, 50% might give it a try. 28% said good chance that it'll work for our school. 13% said definitely will be a hit. And only 10% said unlikely to try this recipe. Again, all of the recipes can be found at healthyschoolrecipes.com. Okay, before we come back to Chef Sam to see the final dishes, I want to just review quickly the key takeaways from today. First, we can find global flavor influences in favorite street foods, such as tacos, as well as other favorite street foods. Pulses are familiar ingredients that are used in cuisines around the world. Work with your community to incorporate global cuisines onto your menu. Purchase a variety of dried spices and herbs to help create a variety of seasoning blends. And students often want global flavor influences, not necessarily authentic cuisine. So let's reflect for a moment on how you can incorporate today's information in your kitchen. How can you increase pulses on your menu? What global flavors are popular in your community? How can you better meet the diversity of your students? What are the resources in your community that you can pull on? Great. Let's bring Chef Sam back up and take a look at some of the finished dishes. Heidi said she's excited to try some of these recipes. Whitney commented, oh, hi, Whitney. I'm so glad you joined us today. Whitney commented that she loves muhadara. So do I. Such a flavorful dish. Chef Sam, you want to show us the finished dishes?
Sure, I would absolutely love to. So before I might eat them all, because it smells so good in my kitchen right now. So here is the harissa red lentil hummus in a nice little lunch that's easy for grab and go, all cold items. You can serve with some flatbread, vegetables, just easy for dipping. And we know our students love to dip. That's something I quickly learned when I was working in school nutrition. Here is just a vegetable bowl. You could serve it with just vegetables as a side dish, as an offering. Serve, as you introduce this to your students, have half be for a grab and go, the harissa red lentil hummus, and then you can have the traditional hummus that they're familiar with. As Kathy mentioned, taste tests are so important with kids and getting their feedback. Here we have our chana masala with some, you can pair it with brown rice. I paired this with quinoa, also a great option. You have that nice stew, nice coloring. You can also put some naan bread with this. Just great options. I like a little yogurt sauce with mine too. Plain yogurt with some lime juice goes a long way for me, which, you know, I love citrus. So then here we have our muhadara with some steamed broccoli. And this is just a spiced chicken. So all you have to do is take that diced and cooked chicken and coat it with this nice blend of Moroccan spices. There's a great Moroccan spice blend on Healthy School Recipes. And then you can cook it up and you have this beautiful flavor that really combines well over the muhadara that's under here with the lentils and the rice. And it smells so fragrant and so delicious, which is part of the appeal because we know our students always eat with our eyes and their nose first.
Thanks, Chef Sam. Those look delicious. Now we have a few minutes for question and answer. We are running a little bit behind, but we'll take a few questions. Jennifer was asking what you would use in place of the tahini in the red lentil recipe. Any suggestions there, Sam?
You could use a sun butter would go in there. That might be a little too much of a flavor, but also you could omit that. That's just a flavor added to it. So you don't have to add that to it.
Thanks, Chef Sam. If you have any questions, please type them in. Rachel was asking, are there any recipes you would recommend for the K5 age group?
Of these recipes, I think the chana masala is one that you could taste test with them because I think it's pretty mild. It's got flavor, but that would be the harissa red lentil hummus. I would probably say that I would probably take the harissa out of it and just make any flavor. You can really add anything or no flavor at all. It just tastes, the hummus, the lentils taste great on their own with the lime juice and the flavor of that. I mean, you think of traditional hummus with chickpeas, it's just lemon juice, you know, it's nothing too crazy. So you can do that same thing with the red lentils. The muhadara, I don't think too terribly flavorful. It's not going to be a giant, I think your kids with the K5 would be more open to it, but just remember, give them time, right? They need to sit with it first for a minute. They need to look at it a while.
I want to add too, Sam, that Becky Garrison from USA Pulses suggested that Greek yogurt could work in the hummus as well in place of the tahini. And I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you so much, Becky. Oh, I don't see any other questions, so I'd like to wrap up and thank our sponsor so much, USA Pulses. Again, go to their website for resources for schools. I want to share that we're going to be doing 2 more webinars with USA Pulses. On March 23rd, we're going to be doing one on the plant forward menu trends. And in May, on May 18th, we're going to be doing menu planning trends for 22-23 using Pulses. So thanks again, Pulses. We so much appreciate your sponsorship. And now we have the giveaway of the chef's knife, the knife sharpener, the bench scraper, the knife guard, and our hot pad. And the winner is Maria Luisa Huerta from Mission Schools in Texas. Congratulations, Maria. We'll be reaching out to you shortly to get your mailing address so we can get the knife kit into the mail today. I want to thank everybody so much for participating with us today. We love doing the webinars and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thanks, USA Pulses, for your sponsorship. Have a great day.